Okay, yes, recording's in progress. Yes, please continue.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That was it.
Okay.
And final exams, 90% plus on the
Okay.
final exams.
That's great. Okay. Yeah, so if you're seeing those numbers, then yeah, you definitely are ready to go. I would sign up as soon as possible. Just to check, I believe that vouchers were being processed and sent out. So
Yep, they've
at
been
this
sent
point,
out.
everybody should have them. Okay, good. Just want to make sure. I never like to assume. Okay, and so just remember that when you do sign up, the voucher is submitted at the very, like right at payment. So you won't see the voucher field until the very end, actually, just as a reminder. Okay, so I think we went over that last time. Okay, anybody else? How's everybody else doing?
I've been alternating between exams 3 and 4 for the practice exams and getting better, understanding them a little better and picking up things I've been missing on previous ones and remembering them. So still not feeling super confident yet, but it's sinking in more. So
Okay, good. Good. Yeah, honestly, I don't think it was probably until my like 9th exam that I was like super comfortable. And I've taken the exams multiple times, but I've also hit moments where I've gotten pretty lazy about it because, you know, when you take them like 4 times a year, right? Sometimes you're like, hey, I'm gonna go take the exam and just see how I do because I haven't really studied for it. And then you end up passing it and you're like, God, that was cheap. God, what was that, a 75? That's horrible. And then, right, because I have to take them again and again and again. So to be frank about it, it wasn't until like my 9th one that I was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with this, right? So I don't think it ever really happens for people who aren't in the training space, to be frank. So I think that's normal, Nick, not to be like, man, I got this down, right? So, okay, anybody else?
So should we be taking the final exams if we've done the review mode enough and we're getting in the 80s and 90s?
Oh yeah, at least take either the timed mode or the final test again, right? Either one of them will give you a great sample because the time mode actually doesn't allow you to check your answers. So it's almost like the final test, but it's a fixed set of questions. So if you take the time mode 1, like test 1 again and again and again, it's the same questions. So that way, at least it's familiar. If you want the randomness because you feel like you've like memorized a bunch of questions, go take the final test. I gotta tell you, if you get a 90 on the final test, which I think it was Tom who was just talking about that.
Yeah.
If you get a 90 on the final test, that's the entire set of questions randomized down to 65. So if you get a 90 on that, you're good. You're like you should go, right? And go take this exam, which I think Tom just said he was. So, but that's really a great litmus test. So, okay. Other comments, questions, curiosities? Okay. Know that we are actually meeting next week. So even though technically on your sheet, it kind of lists like this is like the last week, because this is like block 5, we actually are going another week. So just know that we will be meeting next week. And you know, just to say this, we're going to be starting other iterations of this. Like, and if you post in Basecamp, I will actually respond to you. So if you send me something, I will continue to respond to you because this is a long-term thing for us, right? We want to stay connected with you. So
yeah, I was curious how long Basecamp was going to stay around, you know, after next week.
Usually we might archive it, which means it just doesn't stay in our priority list, but
Right.
it stays up. So if you
Okay.
email it, we get an email, right?
Cool.
And so when we respond. So and you know, that's something that Victoria, if you want to like make it more active or do something along those lines, just have a conversation with her. But regardless, if you don't do anything, we do put it in our archive mode, but all that means is that it's not at the top of our list when we go to our active list. So it's still an active Basecamp. So yeah.
And like, what about the practice exam? Does that stays available as well?
That's yours.
Okay.
That's you. That does not get rescinded in any way, shape, or form. That's yours in perpetuity. And here's the cool thing is that John constantly updates, him and his team constantly update those exams. So if you're like, hey, 2 years from now, I got to go update it. I still have exams from 2019 that I bought from him that he updated for 2021. He just, every quarter, he just makes sure that it's up to date. He's got a really great system for that. So I guess having, you know, a near like photographic memory probably helps. I don't know. Yeah. So, but yeah, so these are yours. They stay with you for as long as you want them, as long as you want to use them. Maybe get a password manager. So if you decide to use it 2 years from now and you lose your password, you know what it is. So good. All right. Other questions, concerns, curiosities? Because otherwise, you know what we're going to do. You know what's coming. We're going to practice. What's going to happen? We're going to practice, right? Except that Michael Forrester will not only talk about himself in the third person, but there'll be less analysis by Michael Forrester. So, yeah. So yeah, let's talk about this, assuming that Michael Forrester can get out of time mode, which apparently is his favorite because he's always in there. So let me share my screen. Okay. All righty then. We're gonna go for 5 this time. Maybe we didn't win for 5 last time. I don't know if you know this, but in AWS, when you get an availability zone, let me scroll this up so no one's distracted. When you choose an availability zone, so let's say it's US East 1, which is a region, right? But you choose US East 1A, and let's say that Nick decided to put a virtual machine in US East 2B, and we were in different accounts. And then Mike decided to put a virtual machine in US 1C. So like I have A, Nick has B, and Mike has C, right? And we all start virtual machines in our respective availability zones. There's a possibility that our virtual machines are actually in the same data center. Let me change that a little bit so you can think about that differently. Let's say Nick launches one in US East 1A, I launch one in US East 1A, and Mike launches one in US East 1A. Amazon figured out early on that they had to rotate where you physically were by account, like which data center was actually associated with A or which data center was associated with B, because as you can imagine, if people have 3 choices, they usually choose the first or the last. Right? If they have 6 choices, which is where they started, people choose the first, the last, and one of the middles. So B and D, B and E, because there's US East 1A, B, C, D, E, and F, right? So there's 6 availability zones inside of the US East 1 data center. Region, sorry, there's 6 data centers. So what ended up happening is that everybody kept using either A, D, E, so it was A, C, D, or F. They would not use B and E to save their lives because either you wanted to be first, they wanted to be last, or they wanted to be in the middle. No one was thinking, hey, let's just go ahead one. So Amazon started doing it with that when you make an account with them and they figure out what your A, B, C, D, E, and F is, it actually could be different physical data centers. So Nick's A in his account could be actually data center 2. Mine could be data center 1. I'm using A as well. And Mike could be using US East 1A and his could be data center 5. Because Amazon had to rotate the letters around to make sure that people were using the data centers in a distributed way, which I thought it's kind of genius, actually. They just like mask it. We don't care as long as the stuff's working, right? But that you do care if you want a low latency application, because if Nick and I were trying to like connect our virtual machines together and we had to go across 2 data centers, which are connected by a fast pipe, but it could still be a 5 millisecond difference. Nick and I would have to do an experiment to figure out which of our A's, B's, C's, D's, E's, and F's matched each other to figure out like who is like co-located. So like Nick could say that US East 1C matches my US East 1B, like you weird stuff like that. So just fun little things that have nothing to do with the exam. So I just wasted your time. So perfect. Okay, moving on. Let's start with question 20. Okay, we're on security. So the CTO, who's always right, wants to control the use of services across multiple AWS accounts using AWS organizations. Which of the following must be used to satisfy this requirement? Oh, so standard fare, right? 1, 2, 3, or 4 for chat.
I don't remember seeing that question, but I'll guess.
Yeah. Well, so here's the deal.
Not a guess, but elimination.
Here's the deal. The minute you see organizations, the only control structure inside organizations is SCPs, service control policies. That's it. That is the controlling entity that allows you to block services inside of an organization. That's it. There is nothing else. That's it. So don't get me wrong. At the account level, they can put in all their policies and their bucket policies and their ACLs, and they can do all the ways that we control permissions. But when they use the word organizations, SCPs are the only answer. So, and there's only like 5 characteristics to an organization, and this just happens to be one of them. Okay. Here's, by the way, is where they're taking an SCP and they're applying it to an organizational unit, right? And then maybe this is an organizational unit where things get suspended. So if the account is part of this OU, it means that if the account is moved under this organizational unit, that policy applies to it, and that policy is read-only, right? So what happens with SCPs is that they're used to block access to services, right? So for example, if someone is running NGL and they're like, no one needs to be using the quantum computing service, they would actually go up to the top level and just say, hey, we're blocking bracket for everybody. And so what that means is that no matter what anybody did at the account level, no one could use bracket. Bracket's the quantum computing service. Okay. Anyone have any questions about that? All right, I know we're shaking the rest off. You're getting in AWS mode. I know. Flex, stretch, do whatever you need to do. All right, billing and pricing. Company needs access to the full set of monitoring checks and trusted advisor to ensure that its cloud environment is well architected. That's not the only way, but yes. What's the most cost-effective support plan that the business should avail of? Really? Dost thou speaketh English? We're going to avail ourselves of trusted advisor. So which is the lowest plan that you could pay for to get access to all of the checks inside trusted advisor? Verily. Thank you, Nick. So yes. There's a broad consensus that it's business, right? And that is the right answer. Because developer gives you some of the checks, basic gives you none. Matter of fact, Amazon doesn't even really talk to you with basic. And then enterprise is a lot. So if you want to memorize that, there it is. It seems like other than the old English, everyone seems to get that. Thou must needs, exactly. Okay. Which AWS team can assist you when your AWS resources are impacted by potentially abusive activities such as phishing, malware, spam, denial of service, or distributed denial of service? I'm looking at this one going, the support API, architecture support, concierge only comes with a thing. I'm like, it's got to be abuse, right? So for me, honestly, that's just process of elimination, because I'm like, I don't know that I instantly think AWS abuse when I do that, right? And of course that's correct. So the abuse team. Now here's the question: how do you get access to the abuse team, right? How do you do that? Well, first of all, that link is broken. But notice it says premium support. Yeah, I'll just send John a little note. Let's see. How do you even get access to abuse? Anyway, oh, there it is. Abuse of AWS resources. Abuse at Amazon@AWS.com. Okay, so there's the email address. Now we know it's a real thing now. If you email abuse at Amazon@AWS.com, you're going to get access to the abuse team. I'll be honest.
Did you say the form's broken?
I mean, you can use the form, but honestly, I would send them an email.
Oh, I was just curious.
Yeah. Oh no, the form wasn't broken. The link for the for this reporting AWS abuse actually leads to dedicated instance, dedicated host, which is actually woefully incorrect. So, all right. So abuse at AmazonAWS.com. We now know that's the thing. Okay. This is a tricky question. What's the cloud computing model for services like RDS and for ECS? I love how they threw fast in there. Let me give you some definitions that may make this easier. First of all, functions as a service is serverless. So no, that's Lambda. That's actually a specific thing, right? Infrastructure as a service means, can you log into the operating system? Platform as a service basically says, can I configure the platform? Can I control the platform? Software as a service says, I'm a client. I don't really care about the software. I just want to consume it, right? So knowing that when you start a database like RDS, or when you start a container orchestration system like ECS, you can run them in basically serverless modes, because you can't log into the operating system on RDS, right? But you do actually have complete control over the platform. So if you want to modify the SQL engine in RDS, you can. If you want to change the container service, like how it functions, you can do that. You're not just a consumer, you actually have control over the platform. So that makes it platform as a service, right? So I just want to make sure those definitions are clear. If you can log into the operating system, by the way, there's only 3 services that do that. That's EC2, EMR, and Lightsail, right? And don't get me wrong, if it uses EC2, it'll log in, but RDS doesn't actually use EC2. It uses EC2 like virtual machines. But if you can log into the operating system, it's infrastructure as a service. If you're just going to consume it, it's software as a service. If you can control and configure the application, that's platform as a service, because you can control the platform. So just make sure those definitions are super clear. And if you see fast, just ignore that. that's Lambda. That's functions as a service. Wait, did they say that down here? Where is it? Yeah, that's functions as a service. Good. Questions about those definitions? Yeah, it throws you off. Okay. What is the most affordable AWS support plan that provides users access to the AWS support API? So what gives you access to the AWS support API? Because I know like they don't offer it, like it's not just anybody gets access to it, right? And so I would suspect it's the same as Trusted Advisor, but I want to be frank, I'm guessing actually. I don't actually remember off the top of my head which one gives it, but I think it's business, because I'm pretty sure Basic doesn't do it. I don't think Developer does it either. I think that's a premium thing. And so I would suspect it's either business or enterprise. And I'm going to go, since they said most affordable, I'm going to guess business. Yeah, I don't know about none. Unfortunately, that's not an option. No API for you. Well, there used to not be an API actually for support. So yeah, so it is in this case still business. So business gives you apparently Trusted Advisor full set checks, and it also gives you the API. So good to know. All right. Questions about that one? Okay. All right. Organization is mandated to secure its S3 bucket and ensure that it cannot have any public objects to satisfy its compliance requirements. Which S3 feature should be used to easily accomplish this? To ensure that no public objects are allowed. Okay. Well, luckily there's this little section. It looks like there is some consensus on this, but there is a block public access section inside of the S3 interface that if you turn that on, it will block all public access. No one can turn on access. They can't even change the permissions. It just won't allow it, right? Security groups and network ACLs don't apply because they only apply to things that have network cards, which S3 doesn't really have a network card. And VPC endpoints are controlled internal access. So you actually go from your VPC to S3 directly without having to go across the internet. So the other 3 don't really apply. It's that block public access setting that's really ideal. And you'll see it because it says block all public access, and you'll see these little green check boxes that say on. So that's what they're talking about. Questions there? Okay. Which of the following pricing options will automatically reduce your cost on any EC2 instance usage, regardless of region, instance family, size, OS, or tenancy? This one's a little tricky, actually.
Oh, shoot.
The fact that they were like, hey, it will automatically reduce your costs regardless of region, instance family, size, OS, or tenancy. That's a little, when they start adding qualifiers like that, I start getting a little tense. Like, really? because we know it's not on demand, because that's like one of the most expensive ways. This is definitely the most expensive way because you're dedicating hosts. So then you're left with these two because you're like, that these two are supposed to save you money because these don't. We know that. The problem with reserved instances, though, is that I think they require you to specify a region, an availability zone, a family type. Like you can get them convertible, but they still require you to specify certain kind of characteristics or limitations. So when they say regardless of region, for instance, family size or tenancy, I immediately think of savings plans. But I could be wrong. Let's see. Right. And I think that's right, because savings plans can be used for basically any compute, and they really don't care about like region, location, stuff like that. Think of it as like a pile of like money, and you're just you're just eating out of that account because that money came cheaper. Actually, that compute came cheaper as a result. So savings plans are the most flexible of the ways that you can save money on AWS. The reserve instances are definitely not. Okay, let's keep going. Which of the following services displays the general status of all available AWS service and informs you if a service is experiencing availability issues? So not personal, but like not specific to you, but which one in general shows all the services and informs you if the service is having issues? Because these little sneakers, they threw in a kind of a curveball. Because if we check this, it's going to be number 4. But see this personal health dashboard? This will tell you if a service outage is affecting your account. That's so sneaky. Because most of us would go look at the personal health dashboard and be like, hey, I don't really care that you're having 15 outages. I just want to know if any of your outages are affecting my resources. But that is the technical correct answer, is that when it says all available services, then they're talking about the service health dashboard. Okay, questions thus far? Comments? We're good? Okay, try to keep it lean. Try not to do too much analysis. All right, developer needs to set up a message broker service for Apache ActiveMQ running in AWS. Which service should be used in this scenario? I think Chime, which is one of the most amazing Zoom GoToMeeting like services that I've ever seen, published by Amazon. I think Chime is really the answer. That was really heavy sarcasm, by the way. Chime is even Amazon doesn't like Chime. They're ashamed of Chime. I don't even know why they have it. Anyway, I see that there's a general consensus that everyone knows that this is ActiveMQ. So it makes sense that this is what we would use, right? Okay. ActiveMQ, just a managed service for ActiveMQ. All right, which of the following services allows you to quickly query data in S3 using SQL without having to set up or manage any servers? This is actually one of the greatest services that AWS has, actually. So no servers, but it will instantly read structured data inside your S3 buckets and allow you to run SQL queries to get it. It's completely serverless. Jacob, you can't pick 6. Okay. Yeah, so it's the one named after a Greek goddess, right? So Athena. So Athena is really interesting because what it does is you go in there and you say, I want to load up a file, and it structures it out like an SQL table, and it can be comma delimited, it can be Parquet, it can be Arlo, it can be tab delimited, and then it allows you to run queries against it, which is actually pretty nice. So no servers. That's right. That's like a 1998 StarCraft reference, Jana. It's really good. Yeah.
Old school.
Old school. I actually still have an original box version of StarCraft. My son was asking me about it the other day.
Nice.
A company needs to store frequently accessed data in Amazon S3. How will Amazon bill you for storing objects in your S3 bucket? Like which of these is actually a dimension of charge that they're going to bill you for? Well, I gotta say, and I think there's consensus on this, is that it is a storage system. So I would suspect that they're going to charge you based on the size of the object. So that would be maybe per gigabyte or per terabyte. So I'm just going to go for that one just to see. You guys all apparently agreed. The other thing is that they are going to charge you for any like the API calls against it. So if there's a bunch of changes, like you change it, update it, modify it, they're going to it's going to be pennies, but like it'll add up over a while. So, but size is the main dimension. Okay. Which of the following is an AWS hybrid storage service that allows you to connect your on-premise data storage to S3 and simplify storage management? Good. See, so there's some consensus here as well. Is that it's the storage gateway. I want you to know I didn't even know that existed until I actually started training for the exam in 2016. I've never used that actually. Then I found out all the cool things it could do, and I was like, that is kind of cool actually. By the way, it's just a virtual machine that you run on premise that then links back up to AWS. It's pretty cool. It's been around for a long time too. All right, storage gateway. All right, which feature will customers have access to by using the business support plan? Okay, seeing some consensus here, possibly, is architecture support. I gotta say, I wholeheartedly agree with that, right? Here's why. First of all, access to online self-paced labs, well, everybody's got that, so that you don't need anything for that. A TAM and a concierge support team, that only happens at the enterprise level. So even if you didn't know that, architecture support would be the only option left. So, questions about that or anything else we've covered this far? So Tom, if it's okay, I'm going to mute you for a second because I'm getting a lot of wind on your line. Okay, cool. You can unmute yourself at any time, by the way. Okay, so moving on. Customer needs to establish a private connection between two VPCs without using additional software. That's nice. Which of the following should they use? Let's see the answers here. No additional software. Okay. So just to say this is that when you just want to connect two VPCs together, it's just VPC peering. Now, if they had transit gateway in here, that would be another option, but those things just connect VPCs together. Connect is a help desk thing, so we're going to ignore that for a second. Site-to-site VPN and direct connect are used to connect VPCs to a data center, like to your data center, to your corporate office, to your locations. So you wouldn't use those for VPC peering because they don't connect two VPCs together. They're used to connect Amazon to something else. Okay. So that's VPC peering is the right answer. Okay, which of the services should you use to upload SSL certificates? This is very tricksy. Let's see, I saw 1 and 5. I saw 1 and 3, 1 and 3. Any other? Yeah. Can you still hear me, by the way? Yes, I see it. Okay, good. All right. So I saw 2, 1 and 3. So I'm gonna go with that one just to stay with the group. But technically, it's gonna be 1 and 5. I know this sounds weird, but KMS is not used for that kind of encryption. It's actually used for like disk encryption, not for like, it's for encryption really at rest, not for encryption in transit. So certificate manager and IAM will actually hold certificates like SSL and TLS certificates, which are encryption in transit. KMS is really used for it can do symmetric and asymmetric key encryption, but it's really for data at rest. So what that means is that if you need to encrypt a disk or anything else that's going to be sitting statically on a like hard drive, that's when you use KMS for the most part. There are variations to that, but in general, those are good rules of thumb. Certificate manager obviously made sense for this, but most people don't know that IAM actually can also host certificates, right? So if we look down, right, you use IAM basically when there's no certificate manager in the region. So yeah. Okay. Another difference is that the certificate manager can actually generate certificates for you and host them. IAM can't do that. You have to generate them and then import the certificates in. So just things to know. Okay. Yeah, I love this. He doesn't even give explanations for this one. He's like, these just they can't store SSL certificates. Fair enough. Okay. Customer wants to speed up the time it takes to download data between its clients and S3 buckets over long distances. What would you turn on in order to make, like, what service would meet this requirement? What would you turn on? Good. Seems to be some consensus here, is that if we turn on transfer acceleration, by the way, which of the physical locations of AWS is turning on transfer acceleration use? What physical location does that turn on for use with S3? Someone know? Like regions, availability zones, local zones, edge locations. What does that turn on when you start using transfer acceleration? Yeah, Jacob, that's right. Edge. Right? Because remember, these things are salt and peppered all over the world, wherever a major ISP is. And so what you're doing is you're basically saying, hey, when I upload to an S3 bucket, I want Amazon to intercept that connection and run it from their server privately over their backbone back to their data centers. So you turn on edge locations when you turn this on. It's like turning on CloudFront. It's pretty cool. I gotta say, I'm kind of like missing the wind, actually. I felt like I was getting constant feedback. It's an interesting response on my part. Okay. Which configuration management service in AWS? Ignore the rest of this. Helps you use Puppet and Chef. The minute you see the words Puppet and Chef, there's only one answer. There's literally only one service, and it looks like everyone's gotten that consensus, right? Which is OpsWorks. Yeah. The minute you could ignore the rest of this. The minute you say, hey, we want to use Puppet and Chef, we want to run it in the cloud, done. There's only one service that does that. No other even comes close. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. Which of the following support plans provide access to the AWS personal health dashboard? Mr. Kolar, you are totally on top of it today. It's like right there. I'm not saying that every answer is right, although I think that's where they have, but you're really answering quickly. Yeah, so I see 3 as being listed. Yeah, as far as I know, I don't have support on my demo account, and I have access to personal health dashboard. I haven't seen anybody who doesn't, actually. Okay, good. High performance application, HPC application needs a storage service that can be used as a centralized Windows file server for multiple EC2 instances. There's only one service that acts as a file server for Windows instances. We have other services that do file services for Linux, but we only have one that will do Windows, right? Because just to say this, FSX also has a Linux component to it, which is really strange. But FSX is actually mainly a Windows file server. It can do Lustre, right? So you've got the Windows file version and you've got the Lustre version. By the way, this is actually, I mean, you can run this on Windows, but it's mainly for Linux, high performance computing. But its other flavor is the Windows file server. There's only one. That's it. FSX is the only one that will do a Windows file system. Huh, sorry, I was just having a moment questioning one of the
Then why
statements.
did they put the X in it? That made me think Linux.
Oh, I actually asked about this. It's supposed to be like variable, like FS file system something. I was like, maybe you should just call it two different products and call it the Windows file share service and the Lustre file share service, right? You could just do that, right? You could just call EFS, Amazon NFS. Anyway, they don't listen to me. All right, so I see people already putting things in here as far as managing a fully managed continuous integration service that compiles source code, runs tests, produces software packages that are ready to deploy. So I see not sure what the breaking line was there, but I see 2 4s, so I'm gonna go ahead and run for code build. So when we talk about build, like compiling source code, which is building, running the test as that's built, and then producing artifacts, that is all part of a build stage, right? Deploying is where you take the artifact and kick it out. The pipeline can just over orchestrate that whole thing for the most part. And then code commit is just a code repository. If we're talking about just the service that compiles the source code, runs the test, and does and produces the artifacts, it's just code build. Code pipeline is a continuous delivery service, really. So that being the big distinction. Code build is the continuous integration service. So really code build and code pipeline together would actually be part of your CI/CD pipeline with code deploy. Pretty much all the code services, honestly. So remember, if they talk about building source code or compiling source code, they're talking about building. All right, a developer needs to collect and process large streams of data records in real time. First of all, I don't have to look at this point. The fact that they even said streams in real time, there's only there's 2 services now that qualify for this. One is an open source product. One is Amazon's flagship product for this purpose, right? So there's only 2 services that are going to handle real time streaming. Yeah, you already knew that. Okay, good. It's Kinesis. It's going to be Kinesis something, right? What's the other service, by the way, that can handle real-time streaming? Does anyone know?
TikTok.
No, no. I mean, yes, but not data streaming. That's video streaming. What's the other service? Anyone know? Amazon has a managed Kafka service called MSK. I know because a buddy of mine called me pulling his hair out yesterday, complaining about the fact that he couldn't get it functioning. So I was helping him out with Kafka yesterday. So MSK, it's called MSK. So just know that if MSK shows up and it says real time and streaming, that's going to be your answer. But just to say this, MSK is conformant with open source standards, kind of like how SQS is not, but Amazon MQ is, because MQ is based on ActiveMQ. MSK is based on Kafka. So whatever standards have been defined there, it's compliant with them. Although I don't know what those are. Kinesis of any type is their proprietary one, just like SQS is their proprietary queuing system. Kinesis is their proprietary Kafka. Okay. Which of the following services connects VPCs and on-premise networks together through a central hub? What? A central hub. Now, when we talk about a central hub, and I see that you all have guessed the answer, is that we're really talking about a gateway, right? Transit Gateway is one of those services that I told you could also hook VPCs together, right? So it'll not only connect VPCs, it'll also connect on-premise networks. It can do both, actually. Transit Gateway is one of the greatest additions to Amazon's networking capabilities that they've done in a long time. It's long overdue. And it eliminates the need for VPC peering if you use Transit Gateway because it's a lot easier to manage. Just going to tell you that. But VPC peering is very simple if you just have 1 or 2. The Transit Gateway, central hub, right? Bringing all the cats and dogs on the data centers together, okay? We just need to give peace a chance, right? On-premise and cloud can work together. Which service do you use to run complex analytic queries against terabytes to petabytes of structured data? So we're talking about a data warehouse, first of all. So that should be a trigger word for you, right? This is a data warehouse. This isn't a social graph. This is not a big bucket full of random files, right? Of structured data, right? This is not a fast flagship NoSQL data store. Which of these is a data warehouse, right? That's really the question here, because that's what you're doing when you run OLAP basically against a large data set. So that would be Redshift. It's interesting how these exams also require a large amount of understanding of industry terms. Probably they say you need 6 months in the industry to really pull this off, which all of you have, so you're all good. All right, which of the following AWS services does Amazon EBS use natively for encryption? Well, I told you this earlier, actually, on accident. I told you which service actually handles basically data at rest encryption. Yeah, so yeah, good. I already see the answers there. So KMS is the one that handles this, right? The rest of these, this is server-side encryption. This is just embedded inside S3. This is a web application firewall, and this is a service that Amazon offers to protect you against distributed denial of service attacks. KMS is the only one that has anything to do with encryption here, really. Although SSE is bucket encryption, but EBS is going to use KMS. Oh yeah, and we get to talk about how plain text data and a plain text data key gets encrypted into ciphertext along with a key. So I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. Okay, which of the following services protects your web applications from application layer attacks, such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting? So it's one of the ones that we just saw just literally in the last question, right? Because one of these is actually a firewall that filters out like SQL injections and cross-site scripting and stuff like that, but you have to enable the rules for that. So the web application firewall is pretty much the application layer attack mechanism. So you put rules in there. Some of them are pre-created. You can actually put your own custom rules, and it basically filters traffic. So it can't even get to your like application or database or whatever, because it'll just fail the rule. Good. So a company plans to restrict access to content served from an S3 bucket using CloudFront. Which of the following features can you use to satisfy this requirement? So they want to restrict access to content served from S3 bucket using CloudFront. What happens is that what's the mechanism they use so that they can control it? So if someone tries to go to the S3 bucket, they get denied, but yet they still allow CloudFront from all of its different locations to come in and talk to the S3 bucket. What is the name of that structure? And I see that Mr. Kolar has actually posted his answer, so I'm going to go with it. It actually is called an OAI, right? That's actually the structure that they use. This one's actually fairly deep, just so you know, as far as like complexity. But what that means basically is that this acts as a way for which CloudFront can actually attach itself to an S3 bucket, but no one can go to the bucket directly except for CloudFront. That one you just got to know. Origin access identity. So a customer plans to use Amazon S3 to store their less frequently accessed data and reduce their costs. The data is recreatable and will be used as secondary backup. They also require low latency, high throughput performance. Which of the following storage classes is the cheapest and most suitable option for less frequently accessed data, but high throughput, low latency and they don't care if the data is lost apparently because it's recreatable. Okay. So the Glacier stuff is out because Glacier has no access. So, and they said low latency and high throughput. That's definitely not Glacier. Now, standard would make sense because standard is like, it is high throughput and low latency. But they said the data is recreatable and it can be used as secondary backup, which means they don't care about redundancy. And they also want something that's cheaper because they asked what's the cheapest. Well, yeah, this one is actually one zone in frequent access. So infrequent access still allows you to access things at a certain level. So if you do access it, it's still low latency and high throughput, but it's down to one availability zone. So you don't matter, it doesn't matter if it's lost because you can just recreate it, right? So did that make sense to everybody? That whole like reasoning there? Anyone needs any clarification on that? Okay. Okay. Company plans to deploy an enterprise web application that will be accessed globally. The architecture must provide the highest redundancy and fault tolerance to avoid user disruptions. Okay. How should the Amazon EC2 instances be deployed to meet the above requirements? By the way, this is a best practice answer. So good. You seem like you're all in consensus on this one. Yeah, it's multiple availability zones. If they said 2, we probably go for 2, but they said 3. There was no 2 options, so we went for 3, right? Multiple AZs across 3 regions, right? Okay. Generally know that Amazon wants you to use 2 or more availability zones in every region, but because they said highest redundancy, it means you're going to go multi-region at that point in time. So that's the reasoning is that those 1 and 3 only had single regions, which is not the highest redundancy. Don't get me wrong, most people don't need DR level redundancy. Some people do. You know, not all applications need that, right? So 1 and 3 are definitely out because when you're in a single region, that's not the highest redundancy. Deploying to 3 regions with 1 AZ for each region? No, because then you don't have local regional redundancy. You wouldn't do that, right? So, okay. Which of the following benefits do AWS organizations provide? This is 2 multiple right answers here. Gotta pick your poison here, or your right answers. Okay, so I see what's being posted here is 4 and 5, centrally managed policies across accounts, and then automated AWS account creation. I happen to agree. Let's see. Yeah, Active Directory access control is not on the table. Record AWS API calls, yes, if you enable AWS CloudTrail. So that's not necessarily done by default. Ability to create IAM roles, no, that doesn't happen. So it's really these 2. Centrally managed policies like SCPs, and then automate AWS account creation and management. Okay, what types of caching solutions are available in Amazon Elasticache? This one is a straight up open source question. Which are the 2 open source technologies that you can choose when you use Elasticache? That's basically what it's saying. All right. So I see a lot of consensus here, 3 and 4. So it is Redis and Memcached, right? So just know that. You just got to know that one. Okay. Probably squeeze in a couple more. And we might even finish this one. Which of the following AWS resources is a zonal service, which means it is deployed along availability zones, meaning it's isolated to running in an availability zone. It can't be moved, transferred, or shifted between availability zones. I gotta tell you, that's a really horrible word to use, zonal. Come on. And this, by the way, I've seen this question on the test, and I'm just like, seriously, Amazon? Zonal? Who uses the word zonal like that? You have to infer that they're talking about availability zones, right? I was like, just speak it directly. But luckily, and don't be fooled. What they're talking about is this, does a service exist globally? Does it exist regionally, or does the objects it create, do they only exist in a single availability zone? So I saw that some of you answered 1 and 5, right? And then I saw 3 and 5, 3 and 5, 3 and 4. So I'm gonna go with 3 and 5 here, right? And the answer is gonna be 3 and 5, because while Route 53 does create zones, it operates at a global level. S3 operates at a regional level, which is why you assign a region to it, not at a zonal level. IAM operates at a global level. When you create an IAM user, that's true for every region, right? But EC2 and EBS only exist inside of a single availability zone. If you want to pull them out, you got to make a copy, pull them up to a regional level, and then make a new copy into another availability zone. You can't move virtual machines and EBS volumes directly from one zone to the next. Okay. By the way, there's only a few services that are zonal and a few services that are global. Okay. Which of these services helps you coordinate the components of a distributed application and microservices using visual workflows? Okay. See a little bit of consensus here. People are thinking step functions, right? That's true. Step functions are a way for you to visually orchestrate a workflow, basically using Lambda functions. So you can say like, hey, if the output of this Lambda function is red, do this, and then like make a choice. Is it 1, 2, or 3? And then you can go 2, and then it says, okay, we chose 2, run this function. The output of this with red and 2 is, you know, this output. And then you can just like chain workflows together. That's really what step functions does. It will give you a visual workflow that you can actually see how your decision tree is going to go. So it's good. A company is planning to launch an Amazon EC2 instance with an attached EBS volume in a default configuration. You will only be charged for the EBS storage in which of the instance states. In other words, as the EC2 instance it goes through its life cycle of basically pending, starting, stopping, or terminating, which of these are you going to get charged for the EBS volume? So I noticed that everyone said running, right? So just to say this question is horribly worded. You'll be charged, and it should say like, comma, only for the EBS storage in which instance state, right? Because that if it stops, that's the only time you're going to get charged only for the EBS storage. But just to say this, the question is tricky because you're going to get charged for the EBS storage if it's in stopped or running. But if it's only the EBS volume, then it has to be in stopped, right? So can we just write this off to a really bad question? But that's the problem, is that that's the only way you get charged only for the EBS volume, is it has to be stopped. In a running state, you're going to get charged for the EBS volume and you're going to get charged for the compute. Does that make sense? Yeah. Maybe if it just said the EBS. Yeah, exactly. You'll be charged just for the EBS storage. Yeah, I agree. That didn't happen very often. They don't usually like do, there's not trick questions on the exam. Which of the following are capabilities provided by Route 53? Ooh, Which of these two are the capabilities that a DNS provider would do, right? Three and four. See that in chat? Yes. That's it. So resource metrics collection, what service does resource metrics collection? Someone type it out for me. Or say it. I'm good either way. CloudWatch, that's the metrics repository. Web traffic filtering, we saw that earlier in earlier questions. Does anyone remember the 3-letter acronym for web traffic filtering?
WAF.
WAF, exactly. And then distributed denial of service protection. There's a free version and there's an advanced version.
Shield.
Shield, exactly. Good. Just want to make sure that you can like eliminate those as well.
Yes.
All right. Let's do one more and then we're done. Okay. Which of the following AWS service allows you to query data directly in Amazon S3? Wait, this is a repeat. You get to select 2 of these, by the way. So there's a little twist to this one. Okay. So we know Athena is one because we saw that one earlier, right? That was the one that allowed you to run directly against structured data in S3. The other thing that you need to know is that like basically the data warehousing system has an extension to it called Spectrum that allows you to pull data in for analysis on S3. The rest of these, this is an active MQ, this is Memcache to Redis, this is a graph database. So we check that out. There it is. All right. It is 5:58. I want to be cognizant that last time I ran right up on 6 o'clock. So does anyone have any questions or concerns or any points of clarity that they want to ask or, and just to mention this, we didn't talk about this, but hold on, let me pull this up. Is that you should ideally, sorry, I have too many base camps. You should ideally be working on, I'm just looking at this really quick. You should be working on basically taking the exam this week, right? So you're finishing out your exam practice. So again, you want to take another week and do that, that's fine. But you have your vouchers, try and sign up as soon as you can, maybe sneaking in next week. It would be super awesome when we met next Wednesday if you either had taken the exam already or you were about to take the exam that weekend. So just throwing that out there. But if you're not ready, you're not ready. So don't rush yourself. So just know you can take it at any time, but sooner rather than later. Okay. Questions, concerns, anything else before we stop? Okay. You know how to reach me. Thanks for hanging out. I'll post the video in the list so you'll see it by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you need anything, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next week after you have all signed up for your exams. All right, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.